Good morning, everyone, or I should say good evening in Moscow. My name is John Egan. I'm the head of platform sales for Mobup. Mobup is a technology company that's been around for about 3 years, and we've been a part of Twitter for a little over a year and a half now. And as the presentation loads up, what I'm going to cover today are a couple of items. One, it's a bit of a look back at 2014. It was a pretty transformative year from our perspective, based on some of the substantial changes that we saw in the market. And I'm going to give some overviews of what the platform can do, some of the best practices that we've seen really pay off in the fourth quarter and around Christmas time here. And then I'm going to show some example ad strategies that some different types of publishers that use our platform have demonstrated over time. And then I'm going to close it out by sharing a couple of success stories and then a handful of predictions about 2015. It's possible that you'd be wondering what an American guy who's standing in his kitchen at 6 o'clock in the morning can offer the Russian market. I just want to quickly highlight that I do have some qualifications in this area. I was in St. Petersburg last summer, and as you can see, took in the sights, which was great, and brought some souvenirs back home, which were very positively received. So a slight qualification to talk about this market directly. And again, just to kind of overview what we'll be covering in the content today. Introduction, which will take probably about 10 minutes, just demonstrating what the system can do. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the best practices because they're frankly a little nuanced, and it's taken us about 3 years to really understand how to do these things. And then I'll show how some publishers have brought that to life, and then close out with some suggestions for what I think is going to happen in 2015. So I'll jump into it here and start talking about Mobup. And I'll say that my ability to read Russian is extremely thin. So if there are any items that come up on the chat window, I'll ask Alexander to jump in and ask that question now, or we can ask it after the fact. So to explain what Mobup does, the first and most important thing that we take to market is to talk about ourselves as a technology partner, not an ad network. And I'll demonstrate exactly what that means. But our goal is really to allow developers and publishers to monetize their ad-supported apps as effectively as possible, but ideally to do it without spending a ton of time inside of our system moving things around. The goal is really to focus on the content and handle the monetization for you as a partner, not create a bunch of additional work that takes time from your day. And as I mentioned here, we are a part of the Twitter organization. We were acquired in October of 2013, and currently all of our ad stack infrastructure is actually running on Twitter owned and operated machines. So you've got a good element of stability within the system. Now, what we bring to the table for app developers are really a set of tools that help developers and publishers define their ideal ad strategy for apps. And what that means is any type of ad format in mobile we support. We enable the ability to run and monetize banner ads. We're quite good at full screen and video interstitials. And about a year ago, we added the ability to support what we call native ads into our system. Native ads are ads that match the look and feel of your app directly, and they fit very nicely inside of a content stream like an Ask.fm or the Tango messaging app, or a couple of the examples that I would talk about. So in terms of what Mobup does for publishers, we have the ability to support all those different ad formats. And then you can monetize those in a couple of different ways. We give you the ability to work with any ad network on the planet through our network mediation tools. This is the ability to simply plug in a network or 5 or 6 networks and have them compete for your inventory. We also have a direct ad serving capability. So this means if you have an advertiser that comes to you directly and wants to place a media buy on your application, you can take that order from the advertiser, traffic the ads inside of our system, deliver the campaign in whatever format you like using our budgeting tools, and build the advertiser directly. You can also use the same set of tools for house ads or cross promotion. And then finally, one of the most unique aspects of our system is Mobup Marketplace. This is a real-time bidding exchange that is built right into the system. And what this does is it immediately connects you to 145 real demand-side platforms, or essentially bidders, who are buying inventory in real time. So to bring that to life a little bit, I'm actually going to talk more about the developers that use our system and show a couple of examples here. I'm going to start with Flow Free, which is a game that's been on the Mobup platform for about 2 years now. And the Flow Free application is an ad-supported app. The goal of the game is to basically connect the dots without overlapping the lines. So it's a good, simple, casual game. And they have a banner ad placement that runs in the game when it loads up, and then it rotates about every 45 seconds after that. Now, the people who make this game, it's a fairly small company. It's actually only 2 people. So they don't have a lot of time to be in the tools, moving ad networks around, trying to figure out how to squeeze out a few extra dollars from their ad-supported app. So they've been working with Mobup to handle the aggregation of these different demand partners, and then also to optimize those demand partners to generate as much revenue as possible. So what our system is doing is every time this ad request shows up, from our SDK, we pull out all the data that might make that ad valuable to some advertiser. So we're looking at the name of the app category, what operating system the app is being run on, what device it's coming from, and then other parameters like location, whether or not the device is connected to Wi-Fi. And we pass all that information into the Mobup ad server. Now, in the background, this is where it gets kind of interesting. What our system does is we look to see who is most likely to pay the most for that ad request. So as I mentioned, we have the ability to work with ad networks. So in this example, let's say that the Flow Free guys have 3 ad networks, one of which is paying $1.40, the other is paying $1, and the third is paying 72 cents. Our system here is basically looking at which network is paying the most to the least, and we stack rank that from highest to lowest expected volume. That's fairly standard in mobile now, but what's fairly unique about our system is we, in the exact same time, are taking a look in Mobup Marketplace. And what we're seeing is there any one of the 145 bidders that are buying on a per ad request basis who might be willing to pay more for that individual impression? And our system looks at the ad networks and the buyers from Mobup Marketplace, and we compare all those in a simultaneous auction. So you are essentially looking at a massive pool of demand, and all these different folks are competing for your inventory in real time. Our system then awards the impression to the highest paying bidder, which then goes back and renders the ad inside the application. There was a really beautiful transition where all the stuff moved around in here. Unfortunately, that got lost when it got uploaded to the Meropolis system, but hopefully that made sense. I'm going to show just a couple other examples here. The other thing that's worth mentioning is around latency. So that entire process from request to decisioning to auction and display, that all happens in less than 300 milliseconds. So it's designed to work extremely quickly. And we do it about 8 billion times a day right now. So I'm going to focus next on The Score. This is a large app that's been on the platform for about 1.5 years. And this is a little bit different. It's not a gaming application. It's actually professional content. They have, in addition to a feed of sports scores, they are also working with copywriters and editors and artists and things like that. And they actually produce their own articles in addition to updates on sporting events around the globe. And what this team is doing that's a little bit different is they also have a direct sales team. It's fairly small. It's 3 people. But they are out calling on advertisers that are expected to want to run in sporting content. And what they're going to do is try to get direct advertisers or sponsorships to run in relevant sections of their application. So what we do that's a little bit unique here is the process is the same. The code, the SDK pulls all the information out of the app and sends it into the ad server. But in this case, this kind of shows that idea of a full stack solution where we will look at the direct advertisers that the sales team may have successfully gone out and sold, and I'll then also look at ad networks and also look at Mobup Marketplace. And we actually look at all three pillars of the ad stack to see who should win that ad impression. And if the targeting parameters of the campaign are aligned with the impression that's being generated by some user who's interacting with the score, the direct advertiser, in this example Porsche, is the one who wins that impression, and that's what will show inside of the app after we render it through our ad server. And this is actually a real campaign that ran in November of last year, so it's not something I went out and made up. Lastly, I wanted to talk a little bit more about formats. So I mentioned the native ads capability, which is something that's fairly unique about Mobup. To demonstrate what that looks like, I'm going to focus on the app Text Me by Text Me Inc. Now these folks have tried a whole bunch of different ad formats. They've run banner ads, they use full screen interstitials, they actually have a rewarded video placement. But as you can see, the ad itself is a feed of conversations. So there's kind of a balance that the developer has to weigh here of whether or not to make money or allow for as seamless a communication platform as possible. So when we rolled out our native ad format, they were pretty excited about that because it taps into everything that our system was doing, but it gave them a more flexible place to run an ad without having to take up any actual screen space for the users. So in this case, this process is exactly the same. We have the ad unit. In this case, it's a native ad. We pass the ad request into the Mobup system. We go through the same process where we look for ad networks, direct advertisers, and Mobup Marketplace. And then we pass it back to display. The difference here, though, is instead of showing a single ad unit, what our system does is we almost deconstruct that ad unit into its components. So in this case, there is an icon from the advertiser, the title of the item that they are advertising, some copy, and a call to action. And those pieces get sent back through our ad server and render inside the application. So as you can see here, that icon gets displayed as if it were one of the chat icons. The title, the copy, and the call to action all fit into the exact same space as that original chat module. So it matches the look and feel of the application without being as disruptive a user experience. So for publishers who have a content stream like this, we think this is a really powerful tool to continue to build out your ad strategy without having to necessarily fight that battle between revenue and user experience. So it's a nice flexible way to try to add an ad stream into your content stream. And a lot of our developers who have that type of feed style format are taking advantage of that. So again, when you think about what Mobup brings to the table, that simple description of a full stack solution is what I would encourage you to try to take away. And that's that idea of being able to work with any ad network you wish, the ability to work with direct advertisers on your own, and then bringing a lot of incremental demand from Mobup Marketplace, which is our real-time bidding exchange. I also want to mention that ad networks, the ad network mediation tools, and the direct ad serving, both of those are completely free to use on our system. Mobup Marketplace is a revenue share arrangement that scales a little bit depending on the size or the quantity of ads that you're running through our platform. But that only works and it only runs if it's going to earn more than the ad networks running on your platform. So in essence, it's only incremental revenue, which has worked really well for a lot of our publishers. So with that in mind, I want to talk about best practices, and these apply to any mediation platform that you might be working with. Obviously, we'd love it if everyone was using Mobup, but understand that there are a lot of options out there. So I want to talk about some things you can do to make any ad-supported app a little bit more effective. So one of the items around banner ads that we discovered is what we call the singleton approach. And what this means is you need a single consistent placement throughout the app experience for that banner ad. And one of the things that we've seen that actually is probably the single greatest detractor from your ability to generate meaningful ad revenue from banner ads is if you're navigating through the app, like let's say I'm on page 1 here, and then I get into the menu, and then this is the gameplay area. If every time I move from one screen to the other, it calls an entirely new banner ad placement, the click-through rate drops dramatically, and as such, the CPM that's generated from ad networks drops dramatically. So it's really important to have a single ad object for this banner ad and carry that forward throughout the navigation of the application. And what we've seen is up to 10% higher CPMs just from doing this. Like, there is literally no other work that's taking place other than having that single ad placement throughout the app. So that's just a very simple, meaningful best practice that we'd highly recommend. When it comes to interstitials, this is something that it's a little bit less scientific, I would say, and probably more of a blend of commerce and art. It's this idea of what I call the intention trough. And if you think about a game in particular, as you turn that app on, there are different moments throughout that game, and you have a different level of intent or purpose as you go through that. So when I launch the app, I'm obviously trying to get to the active play part of the game. If I scroll through the menu, I'm clearly trying to learn something. Instructions, I'm making sure I know what I'm doing. And then when I get into the active play itself, like this period of time, my purpose is very high. So it's about the worst time possible to show me a full screen app, a full screen interstitial ad. Now, if I lose, which does happen from time to time, there's usually this game over screen. And then often there is a replay button. And what we found is that this is a major difference in terms of how full screen interstitials perform. So if you show that full screen ad here at the game over component, that's essentially the user's lowest point of purpose within that app. They may play again, or they may be willing to go and look at some other piece of content which the ad is likely to show them. But oftentimes what we find is people will hit the replay button, and that's what the developer uses as the trigger to show that full screen ad. So now I've already demonstrated my purpose is to go back and play another session, but you're interrupting that with a full screen ad, as opposed to down here, I didn't have as much intent with what I was going to do. And when we really dug into some of these numbers, it's a little tough to see here, but it's pretty fascinating. The blue is the revenue, click-through rate, and clear rate, or the number of auctions that are being won within Marketplace from a developer that uses the game over placement. The orange line, the much lower line, is the almost same-sized developer with very similar content who is triggering the interstitial on the replay button. And probably the key number here is revenue. As you can see, even with the same amount of traffic running through, just that change in placement had a dramatic increase in how much revenue that publisher was able to generate. In fact, if you time it correctly, you can actually double your revenue and your click-through rate just by really thinking about what that user is trying to do. And then lastly, if you're going to be running full-screen interstitials, we have the ability to turn on video ads at the same time and placement. I think this is directly linked to that prior slide. If you can find the right place where you're not interrupting that user's journey, this is pretty powerful because the premium that comes with a video interstitial, it's about a 50% higher CPM on average. And it also seems to be quite a few brand advertisers, so not necessarily download this game type ads, but it's a great fit. And we also have the ability to configure these ads so that it mirrors the sound of the device itself. So if the sound is off, the sound from the video ad is off. And then you have the ability to say only 15-second ads, or you can allow 30-second ads with a skip button. So there's quite a few customizations that you can put in place here. So I want to kind of move into some of the, away from the best practices now, and talk about what some publishers on our platform are doing. Oh boy. There we go. So this is, I'm going to show four examples, and because this is a little bit of a dense slide, I'll try to go fairly quickly. This is a gaming publisher who has 14 apps. They're free with paid upgrades. And what they're using is the entire scope of the system itself. So as you can see, networks account for about a little more than half of the ad requests, RTB a little bit more than a quarter, and they do a little bit of direct sales, not much, and run house ads. And then the revenue is interestingly pretty similar. Networks is almost the exact same component. What you can see consistently here, though, is that even a little bit of direct sales brings quite a bit to the table in terms of overall revenue because you're able to sell it at a premium. And then they use about 1/8 of their overall traffic just to support new app launches as free house ads. So again, this is that full stack idea kind of brought to life. This is one single large app. In this case, what's quite a bit unique is ad networks take up the vast majority of their traffic, but it generates just slightly more than half of their overall revenue. So this is really the idea of that incremental demand that's coming through real-time bidding, and then the ability to take a handful of direct advertisers that really make sense and make 20% of your revenue from just 2% of the traffic. I think that's pretty fascinating. This is a gaming company that started off in online building flash games. They've recently moved to mobile. And in this case, direct sales and real-time bidding are about half of their overall revenue. So in this case, they're actually trying to figure out who is willing to pay the most, and then they let the system do the work as the real-time bidding component competes directly with their direct sales efforts. And the last one, which will look totally different, is a big freemium portfolio publisher. They have about 110 apps on the Mobup platform. And they found that network ads, real-time bidding, it's just not a good strategy for them at all. So they do a tiny bit of direct sales, and they use our system almost exclusively for house ads, and they shuffle users from one game to another and try to drive in-app purchases, all of which is completely possible on Mobup. So a lot of different ways to take that ad inventory, to take those best practices, and turn that into a pretty interesting business. Some success stories just to kind of help bring that to life. Lodem is a publisher that is based in Germany. I believe they switched off the AdMob mediation product a little over a year and a half ago, and have found that that combination of the ability to work with multiple networks and real-time bidding has been pretty meaningful, as you can see here. This is a social networking publisher who was able to use a lot of custom ad networks, specifically folks that focused on location, and increased their overall eCPM by 50%, which is pretty meaningful. The Half-Brick guys, this is a bit of an older one, but they moved off of MobClicks in 2013. And even though their app was fairly established and actually decreasing in terms of monthly active users, they were able to more than double the overall revenue just by using the tools in a more sophisticated way and having that demand come from real-time bidding. And the latest one, and I think what is most interesting and directly linked to the title of this presentation, which is thinking about 2015, is Trivia Crack. That's been the #1 app, at least here in the States, since about early December. And what was really interesting here is this was the first time I had seen the majority of the revenue coming from brand advertisers that were buying through real-time bidding. We always believed that was going to be the case, but we hadn't really seen it before. And with this great big app running on the Mobup platform, they actually had more than half of their overall revenue that came through the exchange came from brand advertisers. And some of the advertisers that were in there were actually quite surprising to me. It was folks like Volkswagen, even makeup ads like Sephora, and luxury cars like Jaguar were present, and not in small increments, but actually fairly substantial quantities of advertising spend. So I think what you're starting to see, and this kind of takes us to 2015, is that this idea of advertisers across the board paying more attention to apps is really starting to happen. This is a slide that we used to talk about a lot with our Twitter friends, and we would show that the quantity of time that was being spent in mobile app had eclipsed desktop. And what was pretty fascinating about this is you're basically saying if you're an advertiser in the United States and you want to connect with some user on a digital device, buying an ad on a mobile app is actually a better value proposition than buying on desktop. And that was somewhat counterintuitive and surprising because people immediately think about, but the banner ad, it's so little. That's where this idea of multiple formats makes sense. And then when we looked even closer at this is looking in December. So the blue bar here is the quantity of spend that was coming from our exchange in these 3 weeks, the biggest spending weeks in terms of advertising in the United States, at least, last year. So as you can see, last year it was fairly meaningful, up to 28%, which was great. But this year, everything was up. And when you look at that last week of right up until Christmas Eve, more than half of the overall spend that was coming through our exchange, which is connected to 13,500 apps, more than half of that was from brand advertisers. So I found that to be just shocking. And this is a major difference in what has happened in mobile in the past. So I think what you can confidently say going forward is that what you're going to see in in-app advertising is not just the same old, like, download this other app type advertising. It's going to be a big, wide canvas of a lot of different advertisers, and there are going to be more and more of those folks coming in there. And the last piece here to demonstrate that is a deal that our sales team was able to strike with a big agency holding company called Omnicom, where they basically committed to spend $230 million across their portfolio of advertisers on mobile only, and it's a mix of Twitter and then the apps that are connected to Twitter through the Mobup exchange. So pretty powerful stuff. And I think the bold prediction for 2015 is that you're going to continue to see that evening out between brand advertisers and performance advertisers, and more people making apps a more significant part of their overall ad budget. So that is it from my side. I know that's a lot of content to run through in 30 minutes. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are some. You're also welcome to take a look at the materials, case studies, best practices from our website, or send me an email directly here. Or if you're a Twitter user, that's always encouraged, feel free to ping me directly at my Twitter handle there, which is also my Skype, by the way. So Alexander, I'm going to flip it back to you here to see if there are any Q&A. Good question. Do we support an integration with has offers or cake marketing? So the people who are buying on our exchange certainly support both of these. I know has offers, which is now Tune, is been a long time Mobup user. What that indicates, though, I think you're asking about the ability to do user acquisition through our platform. So you can certainly work with any of the 145 DSPs that are connected to Mobup to run that. We don't have the ability to take a media buy from you directly. So I can either send you the list of who is buying on Mobup now, and you can work with them, or I can actually connect you with Twitter, because they can obviously take a user acquisition campaign. They work with has offers, I'm sure, and can run that on both Mobup as well as the Twitter organization. Welcome. So this feels like a bit of a waiting game here to see if there's anything else. Hello, sir.
Hello. Thank you very much, John, for your webinar, for your presentation. For me, it sounds really interesting. Ребята, если есть вопросы, if you have questions, please be free to ask, because John is the one of the most expertise guy in this field worldwide. Or maybe John just covered everything.
One thing I forgot to mention is we are going to be doing a series of events in Europe over the next few weeks. We're going to be in London next week on Thursday at the Vinopolis venue, which is where the Pocket Gamer event was in January. We're going to be in Berlin the week after that, and then have a fairly substantial presence at Mobile World Congress. So if you happen to be in any one of those places over the next 3 weeks, just let Alexander or I know, and we'll be happy to get you an invite to these different conferences and meetups that we'll be hosting there.
Okay, so thank you very much. I think we'll have, I hope that we'll have recorded this webinar and we'll send to everybody. Also, we can send the whole presentation if you want. And thank you very much, John, and thank you very much, guys, for being with us. So we've done.
Thank you.